Okay, I hope that everybody is now live on board for the EPOMM webinar, broadcasted live all over the world from EPOMM, the platform on mobility management. My name is Reinhard Jelinek. I'm happy to be the moderator of this webinar with a few very interesting presentations on mobility management of very different countries. First of all, I'm happy to introduce the Vice President of EPOMM, Melanie Schade from Germany, who will give you a few words of introduction and what is EPOMM about, and to introduce the platform on mobility management and give a short welcome speech. Melanie, may I ask you to come to the floor?
Thank you, Reinhard. Yes, my name is Melanie Schade. I'm the Vice President of EPOMM, and I sincerely welcome you today to this webinar. So EPOMM is the European platform on mobility management, and we are a network of governments in Europe that are engaged in mobility management. The countries are represented by ministries that are responsible for mobility management. And we are organized as an international nonprofit organization with seat in Leuven. So today you will meet some of our members at EPOMM, and we will talk about mobility management for companies, which is one of the themes we are dealing with. So the goals of EPOMM overall is to bring mobility management to the European agenda. We as a network work together and have information exchange and learn from each other to inform us and also to move forward on mobility management in each country. And also we work with the European Commission together to also bring mobility management on the European agenda. We are promoting mobility management in our countries and also work together as a network. So, for example, a few years ago, we started to develop fact sheets on different topics of mobility management, on active mobility and mobility management for companies, to show national approaches on these topics and learn from each other. Also, EPOMM is providing services and tools. We are happy to have this webinar today and have presentations on different countries and show you some of the good work which is done, and I hope we can all learn from each other. So welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Melanie, for your welcome words. Then I would like to start with a very quick introduction round of the other speakers, starting with myself probably. I'm Reinhard Jelinek. I'm working in the Austrian Energy Agency, and I'm serving as national EPOMM focal point for Austria. I'm also a program manager of the Klimaaktiv Mobil program, the national action program for mobility management. There will be a presentation by my colleague Gilbert on more details of the Klimaaktiv Mobil project and mobility management in Austria. But I want to point out that Austria is a very active member in EPOMM, in the European platform on mobility management, and also currently holds the presidency of EPOMM. So I want to hand over greetings from the president of EPOMM, Robert Thaler, of the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. That's our ministry in Austria. And I would like to introduce the other speakers now, starting with France, who will give the first presentation today. It will be done by Joris Marel from CIREMA, who is project director for the decrease of mobility demand in territory policies. Joris, can you just introduce yourself shortly?
Right, thank you, Reinhard. And good morning, everybody. Yes, I am the national focal point for France on behalf of the French Ministry of Transportation. And the agency where I'm working, the CEREMA, is a governmental agency, but it is strongly linked with the local authorities, and we help them to improve and implement their public policies on the land using and mobility.
Thank you very much, Joris. Second presentation will be, as mentioned, it will be the Austrian presentation given by Gilbert Guck on the Klimaaktiv Mobil program. Gilbert is from Harry Consult in Austria. Gilbert, please say a few words.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and welcome and good morning also from my side. I will give you a short overview of Klimaaktiv Mobil, the national action program for mobility management here in Austria, with its financial support and consulting scheme.
Thank you, Gilbert. The third presentation will be a very interesting one also for me, because it will come from the newest member of EPOMM, which is Malta. Malta just joined the EPOMM initiative, I think a little bit more than a month or so. And the presentation will be done, and I'm happy to introduce Nikat Akhtar from Transport Malta. Nikat, can you say a few words, please?
First of all, we are really pleased to be part of this platform, because we realize that there is so much that we can share. I am actually doing this presentation on behalf of Laura Somalia, who's a new board member of EPOMM. We got introduced to EPOMM through Internet project, which is Interreg Mediterranean project. I'm a project manager of that project, and entering EPOMM to become a member was one of the deliverables. Until we entered, we didn't really realize that how big in ideas this organization is. And we're really pleased, and we look forward to share our experiences, challenges, and hopefully we all improve our transport operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikat. So before we start the presentations, I would like to invite everybody, all participants, wherever you are, to join the discussion after the presentations. If you have any questions, if you have any input, any remarks, then we will be very happy to respond to the questions or to discuss your remark, the situation in your country. So please join a lively discussion. This is what EPOMM is about. And I would at this point also like to mention the European Conference on Mobility Management. This will be the very last slide, but since I spoke about networking and discussion, so this is a very popular and very interesting conference which EPOMM is organizing each year. And after 2 years in the pandemic, where we only had virtual ECOMM conference on mobility management, I'm happy that we will have a conference on site again in Turku in Finland from 31st of May to 2nd of June 2022. So we will come back to the ECOMM at the very end of this webinar. And now I would like to share the screen for the first presentation. So it should be this one. So I hope that everything is fine with presentation mode. If not, then please anybody give me a remark, because the moderator unfortunately can never be sure that everything works. And so we do have yeah, okay, sorry for this. It was not the start of the presentation, so I need to come back to slide 1, and this is the first slide for Joris. So I would like to give Joris now the stage for the presentation, Mobility Management for Companies in France. Joris, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I'm now going to explain you what is actually implemented in France as mobility management measures and tools for the companies and for their employees. So please Thank you. There is a new legal frame in France for mobility management for companies since the year 2019. Before 2019, there were some obligations for the companies related to mobility management. For instance, companies with more than 100 employees at the same site had to make a company mobility plan. It was an obligation, but it was not very effective, as there were no sanctions if the companies didn't comply with this obligation. So the decision was made in 2019 to create a new frame, mainly based on social negotiations and on incentives. And since 2019 in France, the mobility management for companies was deeply reshaped as two steps. The first steps is that company mobility plans come only after social negotiations on the employees' home to work mobilities. This is the first step, and there was a new tool that was implemented, which is a new financial incentive for employees. So please, thank you. So I will first talk you about the new measures on the social negotiations on employees' mobility. The companies with more than 50 employees on the same site has the obligation to have social negotiations with the employees' representatives. And since 2019 in France, the employees' mobility issues are one of the themes that has to be negotiated during these social negotiations. And it is an innovation since 2019. And during these negotiations, companies with more than 50 employees have to negotiate with the employee representatives to improve the employees' mobility. And the idea beyond this is that we try to have the companies and their employees to negotiate and to have an agreement on mobility issues of their employees. And only if there is no agreement, there is therefore an obligation for the companies to draw up a company mobility plan. Yes, of course, every company can always take the decision to make a company mobility plan, but it is thus a voluntary decision. But the company mobility plan only becomes an obligation after there is no agreement during social negotiations on the employees' mobility. Mm-hmm. And once the company make a company mobility plan, it has to be forwarded to the local authority responsible for mobility policies, either intermunicipality or region, depending on the place. Mm-hmm. The other innovation within the 2019 law on mobility was a new financial incentive for employees, which is namely the forfait mobilité durable, which can be translated in English as sustainable mobility package. But after I will speak about FMD. This FMD is not mandatory. It has to be a decision made by the company itself, and its amount is at the employer's discretion. If the amount of the FMD is under 100 euros per year, yes, we are speaking per year, the amount is free of taxes and social benefit charges, either for the employer and for the employee. But if the company takes the decision to implement FMD over 500 euros, the company and the employee will have to pay taxes and social benefit charges on the sole amount beyond 500 euros. Yes. Next, please. Doesn't work anymore.
So
good, thank you. And what is the FMD actually about? The FMD only is due only to cover the employees' expenses on sustainable means of transport. What are the sustainable means of transport? The 2019 law talks about them directly, and we speak about cycling, either mechanical or electric ones, carpooling, either for the employees being the passenger or the driver, low emission car sharing, e-motorcycle rentals, and public transporting. But there is another financial incentive about public transports, and I will speak about it just a bit after. And the counterpart of the FMD is that, of course, the company, the employer, has to control the effectiveness of its employees using sustainable means of transport. But this control is mainly made at least 1 year, and it's upon the employee's self-declaration. This is the main frame about mobility management measures in France, but there are other existing mobility management measures that exist for companies and their employees. For instance, since 2010 in France, all employers, either public or private one, must reimburse 50% of their employees' public transport subscriptions. And so the FMD that I was talking about just before is only to cover the employees' expenses other than their public transport subscriptions. Another new measure that was implemented in 2019 is some tax reduction for the companies that provide their employees with a fleet of bicycles for home-to-work traveling. And this tax reduction is quite important because it can rise up to 25% of the cost of the bicycle fleet. The last mobility management measures I will talk about is that there is a new compulsory provision of at least 8 bicycle parking spaces in new or renovated trains in order to increase the use of bicycling for people that want to take the train, and so this is to help them to get to their train station with active modes like bicycle. So what can be assessed of this and overall about social negotiations and the implementation of the FMD? The FMD and the social negotiations were actual since 2020. What can be said as for now? There is no evaluation on company mobility plans that was made since the reform, since 2019 and 2020. But what we know already is that there were only 8% of companies that complied with the obligation of having a company mobility plans before the 2019 obligation, the 2019 reform. And so it was not very effective. And I'm not really sure that since the 2019 law, there were lots of raising of this figure. About the FMD, the first evaluation of its implementation was made in 2021. And at that time, 30% of the companies validated its implementation. But I have to warn that we are talking about validating the implementation. It's not the implementation in itself. And many companies were waiting for more explanations and or more simplifications about the FMD, because it is still seen as a quite complicated tool as for now. Mm-hmm. And about social negotiations, they are mainly made about the implementing the FMD, but not really about trying to improve the way the employees are coming to work using sustainable modes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it's all for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is the last slide. So thank you very much, Joris, for the presentation of this, I think, very interesting initiative in France, which may serve as a best practice example for other countries, in my point of view. But since I have not received any questions in the chat, I can probably add one question from myself in the beginning. I think that the main question is the effectiveness. So how many companies use this system? How many companies really get involved and make the best out of it? And I see that for the CMP, there are only 8% of companies complied before. So I'm now not sure what do you mean with complied before, and also with the 30% validated. So what do you mean with validated implementation? Can you please point this out a little bit more for me to understand it?
Yes, of course. About the figure, the 8% of companies complied with the obligation of on company mobility plans. It's a figure that came from 2019, before the new law was adopted. It was the previous obligation for companies with more than 100 employees at the same site to make a company mobility plan. But it was an obligation, it was a legal obligation, but there were no sanctions. So only 8% of companies complied with this obligation. But it was as for 2019. We don't have figures as for now. And regarding the 30% of companies validating the FMD implementation, as I was saying, it's 1/3 of companies which has the obligation to make social negotiations, that took the decision that the FMD has to be implemented in the company, but they only took the decision. They didn't decide about its amount or the modes that were covered by the FMD or this stuff. It's only the main decision. So it can take few or several years for negotiations to come.
I've got two more short questions on this. What happens when a company does not meet the obligations? Is there any kind of fee or other measure that they are? What will happen next if they just say, "Okay, I don't care about it"?
No, they can say they don't care about it as for now, because there are no legal sanctions. And it may be some stuff for new negotiations in the next future, because there is no real effectiveness. The idea was some kind of a bet that companies and their employees would negotiate and then would find a gentleman agreement. But the decision was made not to make it with sanctions.
Okay, thank you. And my second question would be if you know about any feedback from the employees on this negotiation process in particular. Are they happy with it? Are they happy to get involved? Or do you have any feedback on this?
As I know it, I don't know if there were any evaluation about the employees' vision about the FMD. My own fear is that the employees see it mainly as a new financial incentive, but not really for changing that mode of transportation toward their work. Yes, I have some fear about it, but I'm not sure because there were no evaluations as I know it.
Okay, I think after all it depends on how it is done in the companies, because it's, of course, companies engagement, just like citizen engagement, is a very crucial point. But of course, it can be done, more positive or not so positive, and it's the crucial factor then. So, are there any more questions from the other speakers, probably on the initiative in France?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Joris, for this interesting presentation. So my question is a bit also the same, in the same direction as the last one. So when the law was changed, did the companies generally were supportive of it, or was there some pushback on it, or what was the feedback from the company side?
Yes, that's a good question. One thing I didn't tell you is that before the new law was adopted in 2019, there were how can I say that national negotiations on mobility. It was called the Assise Nationale de la Mobilité, which was a national seminar about mobility issues and about daily mobilities for citizens. And there were lots of debates between the government, the labor unions, the citizen representatives, local authorities, and companies. There were many workshops, and with lots of negotiations and exchanges made within this frame. And the 2019 law was the result of all these national negotiations on mobility issues. And so I guess that the 2019 law respond somehow to some of the companies' expectations that were said during the 2017 National Forum on Mobilities.
Okay, thank you, Joris. I want again invite everybody, if you have any questions to our speakers, then please don't be shy and raise it in the chat. And I've noted one more short question. I would like to come back to this slide. I think, you said reimburse, the employees must reimburse 50% of their public transport subscriptions. And I would like to ask you for the more details, if it covers all of the work from home to work and back to home as well, or is this for business trips? What is meant here?
Yes, it's home to work subscriptions.
Subscription,
yes, it's
a subscription annual fee for public transport.
Yes, only for public transport.
Yes.
So it can be either for train or for bus or metro, but and also since 2010, I think the bike sharing public services were also involved in this. In this tool, yes.
Yeah. So you mean monthly or annual subscriptions, I suppose.
Either one or the other.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I think that's also a very interesting examples of a national activity for mobility management. Okay, yeah, so I really think there are a few of highlights in this initiative in France, and I hope this may serve as example for other countries as well. Thank you again, Joris, for your presentation. I know that you have to leave earlier this within this webinar, so I would like to say goodbye to Joris and thank you again for your input.
Thank you very much.
And then I come to the second presentation of the EPOMM webinar, which will be from the example Austria, the Klimaaktiv Mobil program, and Gilbert Cook from Harry Consult will present the financial support and consulting scheme. Gilbert, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reinhard, for the introduction. Today, I will give you a short overview of what the Klimaaktiv Mobil program is about. It is the national action program for mobility management. So it promotes climate-friendly, sustainable, and energy-efficient mobility through different main courses, being mobility management, consulting programs, awareness raising, partners and networks, as well as the important financial funding scheme. Next one, please.
That's all for this, yeah.
Yeah, here we have the numbers. The program started in 2006 and has supported around 21,000 climate-friendly mobility projects since, in many different sizes. With only a couple of projects in the first years, the numbers of supported projects grow steadily since, with an annual CO2 saving of about 350,000 tons per year, 2020 being the base year for that number. With a financial support of approximately 167.5 million euros, it's estimated that the program has created or secured around 10,700 green jobs and triggered environmental related investments of approximately 1 billion euros in the last 13 years. Overall, there are about 88,000 children and young people involved in Klimaaktiv Mobil activity, making it also an important investment for the future. Here you can see a short overview of the cash equivalent of funding related to the different aspects or topics of climate-friendly mobility, with electromobility and alternative fleets being the largest in funding, as well as the related investments. The provision of federal financial support is defined once per year for different target groups and key aspects. Over the years, the program's funding fluctuated with a tenfold increase in 2020 and an extra budget for rapid cycling lanes, since cycling and active mobility is one of the key aspects of the program, partly due to the pandemic. As mentioned earlier, there are different areas of financial support within the scope of the program. It covers support for infrastructure, for active mobility and mobility management, for different target groups, as well as events in the tourist and leisure sector, and information and awareness raising being also a very important part of the program. There are various advantages of mobility management, besides the obvious ecological ones, like the reduction of pollution. Mobility management can also have a positive economic impact on corporates as well, due to, for example, the reduction of operating costs. Also, the employees can profit from mobility management measures by being more satisfied because of an attractive offer, and also maybe healthier because of more active mobility measures. And the implementers, also the corporates as well, having more corporate loyal employees maybe, and using their projects for marketing measures. Since now I bored you all a little bit with numbers, but now I would like to go on some best practice examples of the program for conclusion. The first one is the company Julius Blum in in the west of Austria, which implemented a project focused on a sustainable way to work. They implemented job tickets and for public transport and job bikes, purchased parking facilities for bikes and charging stations for electric vehicles, as well as electric vehicles for carpooling. And with these measures, the company can reduce their carbon footprint by approximately 3,000 tons of CO2 emissions annually. The next one is the AMAG service in Upper Austria, which built a pedestrian and cycle bridge. The bridge connects the existing cycle path in the area and the company's location over a very busy road to enforce cycling on the way to work. And with that, along the purchase of parking facility for bikes, accompanied with various awareness-raising measures, the project can reduce the carbon footprint by approximately 50 tons of CO2 emissions annually. The next one is the Salzburg Airport, which acquired an electric cargo master loader, which enables environmental friendly loading of cargo and luggage. And with the use of the electric loader instead of a gas-powered one, the company can reduce their carbon footprint by approximately 20 tons of CO2 emissions annually. Next one is a large one again, the ASFINAG, the Austrian motorway operator, which implemented a gradual fleet conversion to electric vehicles. Until 2023, over 300 electric vehicles are used for business travel instead of gas-powered ones. And in addition, many charging stations will be installed since then. And with that, the company can reduce their carbon footprint by approximately 1,400 tons of CO2 emissions annually when the transition is completed in 2023. And the last one is a mining company which installed an electric conveyor to reduce truck transport for the rock and the material. And with that, the company is able to reduce their carbon footprint by approximately 408 tons of CO2 emissions annually. So I hope with that overview, I could give you an idea of the program's purpose and its various levels of support and focus points. There are many ways to implement climate-friendly mobility, and all are equally important to reach the goals against climate change. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Gilbert, for this overall introduction and some practical examples of Klimaaktiv Mobil partners. I again want to ask anybody for questions. I see that Melanie raised her hand, please.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a question, two questions. So we learned from France that there is a legal requirement for companies with more than 50 employees. So just a question, so as I understood your presentation, so your program is a voluntary program, right? There's no obligation.
Yeah, it is a voluntary program. The financial support is even bound to voluntary measures, because if there is a legal obligation, there is no financial support. So it is a voluntary program for all companies in Austria.
Good. And yeah, I was impressed by the range of projects you had, especially the last one, which is not one that comes to mind immediately when you think of mobility management for companies.
Yeah, we have a very large range, also because there are many different companies. We've seen the large one, but also many individual enterprises participate in the program and set measures in their levels of possibility. So we have a large scale starting from bicycling to infrastructure measures as bridges and electric vehicles in any different kinds of sorts. and transport optimization in like the last one, for example. So there are very different programs.
Yeah, I can maybe add at this point that we have, as Gilbert presented in the beginning, more than 20,000 partners who partner all the companies, but also communities and schools and so on. And just because the following week there we will have a certification and awarding ceremony again. So we believe that this is also very motivating factor, that our partners get a certificate and are invited to a ceremony, and if it's possible, then our minister for climate action hands over the certificate, and there will be photo opportunities with the managers of the companies, and the Austrian Economic Chamber will be there. And so I think that this is a major factor of motivating also our partners, our companies and communities. Okay, and this will be in context of the annual bicycle summit, the Austrian Bicycle Summit. So it will be a very large audience in the City Hall of Vienna. So we are looking forward to this. Any more questions to Gilbert and the Klimaaktiv Mobil program? If not, then I would like to come to the next presentation from Malta. As I mentioned before, Malta is the most recent member of EPOMM, and we are looking forward to Malta's experiences and also the challenges in mobility management for companies. Nikat comes from Transport Malta and is manager for sustainability and EU affairs, for risk management, and for policy and EU affairs. So Nikat, I would like to ask you to present the challenges and initiatives from Malta.
Thank you, Reinhard. So we can change the slide. As you mentioned, we are new in EPOMM, but apart from being new in EPOMM, I think we have some geographical challenges as well, which I would give you a bit of an idea to get the context we are working in. Geography is very small, it's no secret, right? But in comparison to our geography, our population is increasing. And now, you know, that this year we have about 516,000 population. That was an increase. It's about 20% increase from 10 years, within the span of 10 years. Population density is immense. We are the 8th most densely populated country in the world and 4th in Europe. Our electricity, there's some general information here. We use 230 volts, 50 hertz. Our plug type is 3-in-pin plugs, like the UK. It seems we inherited it from them. The weather average about 23 degrees. It can get very, very hot in summer, as you can see. It can go up to 27 degrees. Sometimes last year we actually thought that we are touched by climate change, because there was a day where we actually had almost 40 degrees. So the challenges are manifold, you know what I mean? The capital city is Valletta, and we, on top of everything else, being a beautiful island with lots of sea, sun, we get lots of tourists, which are about 1.6 million in about 1 year, you know, and that's a challenge in terms of water, in terms of transport, congestion, pollution. So we have to look into many things at the same time. Just a few pictures to show why so many tourists are flocking in, you know, they are not to be blamed. Okay. As we all know, we still rely a lot, despite being in the middle of the sea, we rely a lot on road transport, which is the biggest contributor to air pollution. And we have already taken few measures, but I would say that we have a lot of work to be done. The measures that we have taken so far is reducing the need for road-based traveling within the Maltese territory through the different measures that I'll be talking about in the next slides. We are trying to shift mobility to alternative modes of transport and shifting road-based mobility transport to alternative modes. We have some projects in place that we think that we can actually try to control the pollution and the traffic congestion through implementing some more sophisticated technological measures, which will help us in reducing traveling time and create better journey planning. We are also trying to shift towards shared transport options like sharing cars. We have few companies that have taken great interest in that, and it's being used mainly. We have noted that it is used mainly in the regions where we have more foreign population. Probably they come from regions where it was already introduced in the countries, and that area particularly is Slima, where we have very large foreign population living. We want to have alternative technology solutions to the current internal combustion engine, and we are trying to implement few projects to make it happen. As we realize that it's not because we have manifold challenges, we cannot focus just on one measure. So we have to, we are looking into measures, we have implemented few measures, and we are continuously looking into more measures. And one of the ways we thought that we could actually come up with more innovative ideas, and after following Yuris and Gilbert's presentation, I could see, I was very impressed that there are some very interesting ideas like electric cargo master loader, some of the incentives that France has implemented, like giving 50% reduction. So these are the ideas that we can think about and probably can help us even to implement in our own context. Can we go to the next slide? So far, the government has recognized that the measures that are to be implemented as of today in order to reduce these emissions, and we've been working on it since 2013, we have identified a number of measures. Transport Malta as a transport regulator, it's an authority. Transport Malta is an authority for transport in Malta. And as a regulator, we have launched a number of packages of incentives, including cash grants to promote the uptake of electric vehicles. What we felt good about is that we actually are offering very high grants. They are going up to about 13,000 euros for public and for several stakeholders to purchase electric vehicles. So our first National Transport Master Plan was finalized not too long ago in 2017. And we try to implement and incorporate a holistic approach in it. And this we are hoping that whatever is being proposed, there have been many studies done in order to come up with this transport plan, that we will have everything implemented in 3 years' time, that is 2025. It's a very ambitious document. We have about 274 measures with some projects to be implemented. We are working on them, and they have to be touching the infrastructure, organization, and operational parts of the of everything that involves transportation. So we will also have the midterm review of this plan. It's actually ongoing, it's in process. And we think it's going to be extended to 2 or 3 years. Then again, we will go through it again to see what has been done, what needs to change, what needs to be added. And it would include all means of transport, including air, land, and sea. So, it's in line with the EU cohesion policy. And it's taking into consideration the National Energy and Climate Plan as well. We are hoping that we will be able to achieve about 19% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. Just a moment, please, sorry.
One more.
Transport Malta has launched a number of packages in grant schemes. They are very generous cash grants. What we are also doing is it's not fixed. It's not fixed. We are increasing from last year to this year. We have actually increased the grant. This year was the highest grant we are offering, as I said, which ranges between 1,000 to 13,000. And we have also noted that with the recent statistics, we saw a gradual increase in the uptake of electric vehicles. So we said, okay, so these grants are working. So let's start to work a bit more around it. You know, it looks like it's a good incentive that resonated with the population. So we increased, this year we increased the grant up to 13,000 for some stakeholders. Well, the stakeholders almost involve everyone, because it's persons, it's municipalities, the local councils, it's the NGOs, it's the companies. So we think that through these grants, we will be able to promote the electric vehicles among the population. Incentives have been provided both for private individuals as well as for registered companies, partnerships, almost everybody. We realize that we want to make it as wide as possible, so it almost includes everyone. In addition, electric vehicles do not pay registration tax and are exempt from paying the annual license fee for the first 5 years. Companies can avail themselves of up to 200,000 in cash grants. Electric vehicles are not charged for entry in Valletta. Valletta is an extremely populated place. Apart from the residents, it's a main business center and main tourist attraction as well. So for people who have the electric vehicles, we are offering them that they can enter Valletta, you know, without additional charges. And they can also use the government solar carports. To get some idea of where we are going, we have been working on this National Household Travel Survey that takes place about every 10 years. As the population is increasing, there's diversity in population also now. So this survey helps us to represent a sample of the population that consists of almost about 7,000 households. We have just one published this year. This National Household Travel Survey asks respondents a series of questions about their travel characteristics and habits. Integral to the survey is the filling out of a trip diary, cataloging the responses' trips during a typical weekday. Also, every year we are holding a European Mobility Week, in which we mobilize local councils. Local councils are like municipalities. They're invited to propose projects, measures, the ideas that they have related to sustainable urban mobility. Then, you know, there is an evaluation board. We evaluate these proposals that they send to us, and we choose a winner based on a criteria. Obviously, one of the criteria we see is that they have alternative means of transport, they are promoting sustainability, and they are awarded a grant for the implementation of a permanent sustainable measure, where these municipalities are also provided with project management and implementation support until the respective measure is in place. We also have a series of workshops that we organize annually to clarify the application process and explain the underlying principles related to sustainable urban mobility. Something that we didn't see happening in the past is the interest in Slow Streets project. I have done, it is completed in one of the villages I live in, And I saw a change, I myself saw a change, how people related to this pedestrian way and the area, the road converted into pedestrian area, the sense of community seemed to have grown there, and people are more comfortable, even staying a bit outdoors. That's my observation, but I suppose it might be applicable to all the areas where they are being implemented. So what it does is it converts the traffic lanes about 3 meters to pedestrianized routes and cycle lanes. The conversion of open spaces currently uses parking areas into play and recreational areas, and the designation of a number of essential connectors as shared streets at about 20 km per hour. As you can see, as I'm explaining, the sense of community seems to have grown through this project. We have the Grand Harbor being in the middle of the sea. We have this project going on. It's a regeneration project. What it is trying to do is to introduce shoreside electricity for cruise liners. Being a tourist attraction, we get a number of cruise liners. Ro-ro vessels and other types of vessels visiting Maltese ports, cutting their emissions by more than 90%. That's about 1,400 tons less nitrogen oxide emissions in the Grand Harbor every year, the equivalent of the emissions of 350 million cars traveling from Chirkawa to Marsa Shlock. The distance between Chirkawa to Marsa Shlock is about 35 kilometers. The infrastructure is installed within the Grand Harbor in the port of Valletta, which forms part of the TEN-T network at Pinto Wharves. There are places there. Deep Water Quay, Boiler Wharf, Palombo shipyards, and the number of other small locations in Malta. We have been working on SUMP and SULP. It started, the whole study and the exercise started in the capital, in Valletta. Now we are planning to extend it to other parts of Malta and Gozo to include all the 6 regions. We want to implement, and we are going through a number of studies and trying to replicate what we did in Valletta in other parts of Malta. We are in the process of applying for a few funds as well, and after the successful granting of support and funding from the EU over the coming months, we will have a clear vision of how the local transport systems will develop to become more sustainable, but also safer and accessible for all. All this in today's age and day cannot be achieved without innovative technologies. We have a project at the moment going on, we're working on it, ITS platform. And it is there to help us facilitate the choice of low carbon transport options. And one of the intelligent transport systems, it applies, what it does is it applies information and communication technologies to all modes of passenger and freight transport. Applications and potential services include journey planners, travel information services, advanced and automated cruise control, intelligent master signs, and traffic lights and safety applications. Specifically, towards increased sustainable mobility for the introduction of a national access point solution. We're looking for solutions. So this is also in line with Malta's EU commitments where mobility-related data and information, both originating from the government and also from the private sector, can be made available for public information. We have challenges. Here there is a brief list of the challenges that we are looking into and working on all of them simultaneously. One of them is car battery systems energy storage. The other is increasing charging infrastructure and the use of solar energy. More investment needed in technology, transitioning to remote operations, enabling people and businesses to accept new realities. Costs are still very high. And because the habits, of using the car, it's so ingrained, it has become part of culture, so that culture needs to be changed. which we are trying to tackle through a number of educational initiatives that are going on at the moment in schools. We are reaching out to schools, giving small workshops, interactive talks with young kids. We are also present and starting new projects at the level of high school students above 16 onwards, and at university.
Mhm. Okay, I think this was your last slide, Nikat. So thank you very much for this interesting insight in the situation and the initiatives and measures for Malta. I expect that there will be some questions regarding Malta, since it is because of several reasons, some very interesting country. Are there any questions? So yeah, for Melanie, please.
Yes, thank you, Nikat, for this interesting presentation. It's I definitely learned a lot since you're a new member. It's really nice to see an overview of all the issues and also the challenges and how you go about them. I just wanted to ask more about your last, one of the points you have on this slide here, which is enabling people and business to accept new realities. So do you have some strategies you're using for this?
Melanie, I didn't get the question. Strategies, if you could just please tell me, strategies related to?
Oh, no, on your challenges, one of the challenges you identified was enabling people and business to accept new realities. So I was wondering about that.
Yeah. We are trying to involve as many stakeholders as possible. So one of the grant schemes, as I had mentioned in the presentation, is that to companies, we are giving very generous grants that can go up to 200,000 euros to promote electric mobility, electric vehicles. Apart from that, we are holding these seminars every now and then, and we are inviting people, stakeholders like, taxi drivers, the auto dealers, anybody who's interested in new ideas. For example, in May, we are organizing a webinar on autonomous vehicles, cars that drive themselves. We are trying to get as many people as possible on board to see how it's possible, how it is seen from their perspective, because unless we get their perspective, it's not possible to create effective strategies just by on our own. So I think one of the strategies that we have is try to get as many people and businesses in particular on board and see what they see, what is their perspective, what are their challenges, and how and what can they contribute. And many times it's very interesting, from some people we get very positive feedback. So I think the more we involve them, the more it's possible to have several partnerships, and the faster we can implement the measures together.
Thank you. We have another question from Gilbert, please.
Yeah, thank you. I can imagine that in Malta, electric mobility is a good alternative because of the not so far distances. Has it been a factor up to now, or is this more something you hope to go more in the future?
Yes, Gilbert. We have been working on it for some time now. So we saw an increase from 2013 to this year. It was impressive. We had only like 31 vehicles registered at some point around 2013. Now, coming to 2022, we have about 6,000 electric vehicles registered. So it's gradual, it's slow, but it's on the rise.
Okay.
It's a good sign for us. When it comes to charging pillars, infrastructure, being the landscape as we are is a bit more challenging. there is a whole Ministry of Energy working on it. It's a project completely given to them. They are increasing the charging pillars. They have a project going on where they are planning to have about 600 charging pillars installed all over Malta by 2024, in about 2 years' time. It's very ambitious, you know. It might not look a big number to big countries, but given our geography and the density of population, it's quite challenging. But we are quite confident. We are confident, we are pleased that the progress is being made, albeit slow, but it's being made.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm happy that we also have a question from the chat, from our audience. Thanks for your contribution. And there's a question on a specific issue from Greece. The question is there a good practice in Malta for electric mobility regarding port authorities? Nikat, do you know any about these initiatives?
Yes. It's in progress. It's in progress. We have a project going on at the moment called SMITS. We are implementing some measures. I'm not too sure exactly what's going on, but I know that there are lots of studies being done. Because being an authority on transport, Merchant Shipping Directorate is one of our department. They're very busy because we are also a very large register of ships in the world. There are several initiatives being taken. From our end, what we are trying to do in conjunction with the Ministry of Energy is trying to implement more charging pillars. But there are other initiatives being taken. I don't exactly know, because I'm not directly working with merchant shipping, but I do know that there are lots of projects going on. They're looking into lots of studies because even with the tourism that we have a large number of cruise liners, we have traffic in terms of registered ships as well. So they are looking into several measures, and I'm sure there's already something going on, but I'm not too sure exactly. As I'm saying, I don't have direct link with them. But if you would like to leave your contact with Reinhard, I can look into it and send you some information.
Yeah.
Email.
So please, to our Greek colleagues, please, if you would like to, you can insert your contact details in the chat, and we can forward it then to Nikat easily. Yeah. This is, of course, an issue which will get more important in the future as well. Electric ports, of course, more for Malta and Greece, but we also have a port in Vienna on the Danube River, and I know that they're also thinking about electrifying all of the cranes and the machines which are used there. Okay, so we are a little bit behind schedule now, so that's no problem because we already have left some room for discussion after the next presentation. So I would like to hand over now to Melanie Schade, again, the Vice President of EPOMM, to give her presentation about Germany. Mobil gewinnt is the name of the initiative, and Melanie represents, acts as national focal point of mobility management from the Bundesinstitut für Bau, Stadt- und Raumforschung in Bonn in Germany. So please, Melanie, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Reinhard. So the Bundesinstitut für Bau, Stadt- und Raumforschung is the Federal Institute on Research for Building, Urban Affairs and Regional Development. And I am the national focal point on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Digital and Transport in Germany. So today I'm happy to introduce to you to a funding project, which is called Mobil gewinnt. So loosely translated, its mobility is a winning factor. So if people are mobile, the companies win, the environment wins, and the people as well. So Mobil gewinnt is the federal funding project by the German Federal Ministry for Digital and Transport. It is a project to support companies, but also authorities, public authorities, to set up and strengthen their corporate mobility management. And there have been 2 phases of this project so far. The first one was from 2017 to 2020, and the second one from 2019 and just ended in December of last year. The context, of course, we've heard it before. So the motorized private transport adds a lot to the CO2 emissions in the transport sector. And there's a lot of potential by reducing the travel, the business-oriented travel, and also the travel from work to home, and making it more sustainable, to add a significant, or to reduce a significant portion of these emissions from this sector. The project aims to contribute to the overall climate change goals in the federal government of Germany, and plays a part in that. The funding is also quite broad, the types of initiatives that can be funded. And the measures are to avoid, reduce, and shift and optimize company-related passenger transport, so work from home and also business transport. The first phase of Mobilgewinn from 2017 to 2020, in the beginning there was a competition. And the winners of the competition were able to submit for a formal funding application. During this phase, 17 projects were funded, and they ranged from small to large-sized companies, and also cooperative projects. So projects where different levels and different actors cooperated on reducing on achieving the goal to more sustainable business travel. Additionally, in this phase, it was interesting because there was a free initial consulting on mobility management for companies for 300 companies and institutions in Germany. So this was a very successful project because it was made available and companies could get this free consultation. The first phase was funded with a total of 3 million euros. And then the second phase from 2019 to 2021, there interest parties were invited to submit a project outline and describing a comprehensive set of measures. The measures were expected to use communicative elements also to trigger a permanent change towards sustainable corporate mobility. In this, the applications and the projects were rated, and the best rated were able to submit a formal funding application. And the funding structure was such that the funding rates for companies were up to 60% and for authorities up to 80%. In this second phase, 5 projects were funded with a total of 1.5 million euros. And if it is always very important to look also at the impact of those measures. So the call also of the project asks companies to submit a concept for an evaluation concept and of these implemented measures, looking at traffic impacts, but also potential modal shifts and emission reduction. There was an evaluation which was going on and looking at all the impacts of these programs, and there were some preliminary results that found out that there's an estimated average of up to 300 kilograms of CO2 reduction that could be saved per employee per year as an impact of those subsidized measures in this funding project. There are some lessons learned. So, like I said, there were a lot of different kinds of projects. So one of the lessons is that we found out that the successful projects combined soft and hard measures and push and pull factors. So there was, for example, a project at a university, Rhein-Main, in Germany where they use those measures. So, for example, there was a push factor that there was paid parking. So the parking was made more expensive to go to the campus, but then pull factor was that there was more e-cars, e-bikes made available, and also digital platforms for mobility applications, which was also a good incentive. And then putting in place incentives to change mobility behavior for employees. So incentives can be that sustainable modes of transportation are made available, and that there are more bicycles and also e-cars made available and can be used. Also very important there is that different actors or stakeholders work together, so that you have a combination of sustainable modes on the one hand in the company, but also involve the municipality to have the public transportation also as part of the mix. So you can, there are measures that if you have different starting times, that you can talk to the municipality and have the buses come at certain times. One factor was also making available appropriate new infrastructure. That was not a main focus of this funding project, but there's also a project in Bad Boll where they put in place bicycle parking and also a bus stop or the cargo bike. Also important is continuous support and guidance for employees. There are some examples where they put in place a person who's responsible for mobility management in the company and who's available for questions and support employees to make a change to more sustainable mobility modes. Mm-hmm. So these are just an overview of the program and some of the preliminary findings. We have a website, mobilgewinnt.de, which is in German, but I also provided a link for a brochure which puts together some good practices from this project, and this is also available in English on the website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Melanie, for the Mobility Wins initiative in Germany. Are there any questions for Melanie from the other speakers or from via chat from the audience per YouTube? If not, then I come back probably to the very last sentence. You said the persons in companies responsible for mobility management. I think this sounds very interesting, but I'm also thinking, does this yeah, I think the same question now appears on the chat that I wanted to raise. So I want to welcome our colleagues from Italy who are joining this webinar, and the question is really similar to mine. Does this mobility management get a special education for doing their job for sustainable mobility?
Yes, there are some educational programs. So, for example, the University Rhein-Main, they have you can study mobility management there. It's a bachelor, and I think they're working on a master program as well. And the states in Germany, some of them, they have programs for education on mobility management. This is mostly for municipal mobility management, but there are educational opportunities to get education on mobility management. And also, if you have a person responsible in the company, for example, it's also to have a dedicated person who is responsible to put in measures and is there to consult with people and employees.
Mm-hmm. In Austria, we very often have sustainability managers in companies, not only for mobility, but also for the building and the processes to save energy. and they can also deal with mobility management, and I think they will need some education. If they take the opportunity to take this education, which you mentioned, Melanie, is there some funding for this, or is this paid by the company usually? Costs for education.
With the companies,
yeah, the cost for the education you mentioned from University Rhineland-Pfalz, or so I think.
Rhein-Main, yeah.
Rhein-Main, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a university program. That's just.
But is it for free, or has it costs which the company needs to bear?
Oh, okay. So these are two different things. So the university program is just a normal university program. I don't think that a company would send a person there, but somebody who has the bachelor in mobility management can work.
Okay.
But then there is this other project from which the states are doing, and which is more for municipalities. There, they have to pay for this program.
Okay. I understand. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Otherwise, I would have a detailed question, because you mentioned that companies are decreasing parking spaces and some electric vehicles are offered instead. Does this involve carpooling as well, so that employees are motivated to look at where they come from, if they are coming from similar communities or from the same communities, and can share a vehicle?
Yeah, I think some of the companies are offering, like we in our institution, we also have a board where you can ask if somebody comes from the same area, if you can ride together. I mean, now with COVID, it's a bit difficult, but before, so there are also ride pooling options.
Of course. Yeah, for COVID reasons, then it's a good thing to promote cycling, which is very successful in a lot of countries, and also walking. Yeah. I would like to invite everybody for some general questions, not only to Melanie probably, but also to Nikat or Gilbert, who are still with us. Is there any other issue for mobility management which we want to raise? So I'm looking in the chat. Yeah, I have to look here now. Not anymore. Then I would probably like to come back to the case of Malta, Nikat, and it doesn't have to do so much with mobility management for companies, but with tourism, because you mentioned that Malta is, I think, if I remember it correctly, there are 3 times more tourists than inhabitants in Malta, so which is a really impressive number. And I have been only once in Malta, and several years ago at a project meeting for an EU-funded project, and then there were like 25 people, and all of them needed to head to the airport to different flights on a little bit different times. And this was a challenge, because the people from the hotel said, yeah, really, you need to go to call a taxi or a minibus 3 hours in advance to collect you from here, because it's not so reliable. You have to wait for half an hour or 1 hour until the bus or the taxi gets there, and then there will be a traffic jam to the airport, and exactly this happens. So people were waiting for their taxis and minibuses, and then there was a huge traffic jam in front of the airport, and everybody was looking at the watch and gets a little bit exhausted. So what about tourism, mobility management for tourism in Malta? Are there some recent initiatives in this field? I would be curious.
I do not have, I'm sorry, again, statistics in hand on that. But I do know that in the recent years, we are no longer relying just on few companies. Being part of the EU since 2004, things have changed a bit. The markets have opened more. There are more foreign businesses interested. So we have lots of companies now introducing carpooling, car sharing, even the taxi companies have increased. So in terms of getting a taxi is not a problem anymore. But encountering traffic on the way to the airport, probably we still are struggling with it. So yes, we advise usually the people we know that you can call a taxi way before your flight time.
Okay.
There has been some infrastructural changes. We have built a flyover. I don't know, in which year were you here, Reinhard, if I may ask you?
I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago,
Okay.
probably, yeah.
Because about 2 years ago, we had constructed, it's ready, a flyover, in a junction where the traffic was somehow always being, concentrated and jammed. It seems it has helped a bit, but of course, that's not the only solution. We have to look more into other, perhaps also introducing alternative routes. We are working on that too. We have increased the signage on, the signage on the roads for alternative routes as well. The infrastructure is, you must have heard that we are doing lots of construction, but the thing is, eventually, hopefully, it's for the good, because there are these projects done by Infrastructure Malta. They also fall under the Ministry of Transport. That they're looking into changing the roads completely. Many roads have been changed. Few flyovers have been built, and there are more in pipeline. So yes, things are being done, but it would take some time.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that's a good statement at the end. Everything is changing, but hopefully for the good. Also regarding mobility management and sustainable mobility. And of course, it's a good sign that Malta is now member of the EPOMM program. So I'm pretty sure that there will be lots of advantages and benefits and positive things going on in Malta. So I would like to share the screen again for the last slide and invite everybody participating at our webinar to the EPOMM conference, the European Conference on Mobility Management. And I really can say the EPOMM has developed all over the years as the meeting place for mobility management practitioners and experts from all over Europe. It's organized as a 3-day event and usually attracts several hundreds of participants, of delegates. We had 300, 400 delegates in the last years before the pandemic. There will be excursions and speeches, keynote speeches and parallel session. There will be an exhibitions, around 15 to 80 different presentations from several European countries and also from countries outside of Europe. There will be workshops and of course, that's important, lots of opportunities for networking, for making new contacts. We had 2 virtual meetings in the latest 2 years, and we will have now the EPOMM again on site in Turku in Finland. Finland also being a EPOMM member country, and the conference will take place, as you see, from 31st of May to 2nd of June. The registration is open, and I can add also the early bird registration is now open. So please take use of the early bird registration, and we would be very happy if you would participate in the EPOMM conference 2022. And I'm looking forward to this conference very much by myself, and want to thank now at this point again. We are very much in time, luckily for all the speakers for our webinar. I'd like to thank everybody for listening per YouTube, and let's go on with working on mobility management all together. Goodbye from my side. Thank you. See you probably in Turku.